While I love all kinds of fighting games, from the old school classics like Street Fighter and Samurai Showdown, to the games like Tekken and Soul Calibur that ushered in the era of 3D fighting games, to platform fighters like Smash Bros, the fighting game franchise that I've most consistently enjoyed over the past decade has been Mortal Kombat. I've been all in on Mortal Kombat since MK9 dropped in 2011, so NetherRealm has pretty handedly earned their place as my favourite fighting game developer, and one of my favourite developers full stop. Mortal Kombat 1 is yet another reminder of why this is the case. Mortal Kombat 1 takes everything that's made the last few entries in the series so great, like the excellent story modes, fluid combat and gorgeous visuals, then ramps everything up another notch to provide what may very well be the best Mortal Kombat game yet. If there's one thing NetherRealm Studios has become synonymous with over the past decade, it's great story modes. NetherRealm refined and mastered the art of implementing cinematic story modes into fighting games, and just like MK9, X, 11 and the two Injustice games, Mortal Kombat 1 continues this trend with another exceptional story mode filled with exciting set pieces and incredible fight choreography. Mortal Kombat 1's story is a massive celebration of Mortal Kombat that pays reverence to the entire franchise, but especially the PS2 games, which I was so happy to see as I have a particular soft spot for those games as they were really where I cut my teeth on the Mortal Kombat series. Picking up after the events of Mortal Kombat 11's Aftermath DLC, Mortal Kombat 1 takes place in a brand new, rebooted timeline created by Liu Kang, who's now the god of fire. This new timeline turns many of our expectations of the Mortal Kombat universe on their head. In this timeline, Scorpion and Sub-Zero aren't the mortal enemies from warring clans that we expect them to be, they're instead brothers. Raiden isn't the all-powerful god of thunder in this universe. Instead, he and Kung Lao are amateur martial artists who spend their days working the fields harvesting cabbages for their village. Shang Tsung is a pathetic snake oil salesman who, when we're first introduced to him, is getting his arse beat by an angry mob after being exposed as a fraud. And Liu Kang has assumed Raiden's traditional role as the protector of Earthrealm, who's assembling a team of warriors to compete against the best fighters Outworld has to offer. Of course, not everything has changed, and some characters are still instantly recognisable, like Johnny Cage, who's still an egotistical actor whose relevance is dwindling, stuck way in over his head, fighting a battle he can't fully comprehend. I love that when we're first introduced to Johnny in MK1, he's in character shooting a scene for this universe's version of Indiana Jones. It's nice to see Johnny actually being an actor. However, I'd be lying if I said this bit doesn't go on a little too long, as we spend 10 minutes waiting for a director to yell cut, which you know is coming the entire time. While I was initially a little worried that Sonya's absence in Mortal Kombat 1's story might also negatively impact Johnny's role, he's still able to steal the show here, thanks to the fun dynamic created by the rivalry Johnny and Kenshi develop. I also really enjoyed seeing Raiden and Kung Lao share the kinship you'd normally expect to see between Kung Lao and Liu Kang. If there's one thing Mortal Kombat 1's story mode does exceptionally well, it's these small, interpersonal relationships between its cast members. While Mortal Kombat is known for its absurd levels of violence, another thing that's been persistent throughout all the Mortal Kombat games is the franchise's wicked sense of humour. Mortal Kombat 1's writing is genuinely funny, with multiple lines making me laugh out loud throughout. Mortal Kombat 1 has my favourite MK story mode yet. It is very heavy on fan service, but hey, I'm a big fan of Mortal Kombat, so it worked for me. And if you're a long-time Mortal Kombat fan, I imagine you'll also have a great time nerding out over the way that MK1 plays with our expectations of the characters and lore of Mortal Kombat. Watching these characters grow into the roles we know they need to fill is satisfying, and even with such a big cast of characters to juggle, Mortal Kombat 1 manages to give every character their moment to shine. As always, I'll keep the review spoiler free, but I'd be remiss to not say that the ending of Mortal Kombat 1 is spectacular. They didn't need to go this hard, but thank God they did, because it is awesome. This portion of the story is just pure fan service, but I was eating it up. The one major concern I initially had with Mortal Kombat 1's story, based on the early hours of the game and the trailers we saw in the lead up to release, revolved around the inclusion of a certain villain. But I'm glad to say that MK1 didn't go down the route I was worried it was going to, and I am so grateful for that. I know I'm being extremely vague, but once again, I just don't want to spoil anything. One piece of advice I would give is if you've played the other modern Mortal Kombat games, you'll probably want to bump up the difficulty for story mode if you want any kind of challenge. I played the story mode on normal difficulty and it felt more like easy. In fact, I never lost a fight, so I think it's worth starting on hard if you're already familiar with NetherRealm's games. Like other recent NetherRealm games, Mortal Kombat 1 is great for both long-time fighting game fans and newbies. MK1 has a robust suite of tutorials that can onboard even the most inexperienced player, but also provide helpful guidance for those who are familiar with Mortal Kombat but looking to sharpen their skills and take their game to the next level, with these tutorials taking you from the bare basics of how to attack and defend, all the way up to the complex nitty-gritty minutiae that only players looking to play at a high level would ever need to worry about. In most ways, Mortal Kombat 1 plays similarly to other recent MK games. You're stringing together combos of front and back kick and punches, grabs and special moves, learning the timing to block and counter every opponent's attacks, and there's still a heavy focus on juggling opponents in the air. You'll also still be managing a special gauge, using it to enhance the power of your special abilities by holding R2 during the final prompt of a special move's input. Or you can of course save your special bar up to perform a fatal blow, a vicious X-ray move that can be used to turn the tables of a match when your health is low. These X-ray moves have been such an iconic part of Mortal Kombat since 9, and MK1 features the most over-the-top, gruesome, and comical X-ray moves yet. It's so absurd seeing a character have their bones shattered, their eyes gouged out, or be impaled repeatedly, only to get up and continue fighting. But it all works with the ridiculous, cartoony tone of Mortal Kombat. The new X-Factor introduced in Mortal Kombat 1 is Kameo fighters, support characters who you call in to perform their own special moves, to extend your combos, break an opponent's combo on you, or keep an opponent at bay to buy yourself a moment to think. Kameo fighters are summoned with the press of R1, and by pressing a directional button at the same time, you'll change the action they perform. The Kameo fighters' special abilities are tied to a gauge that slowly replenishes throughout fights, so you can't spam them constantly. Mortal Kombat 1's Kameo system is one of the most fluid and dynamic implementations of support characters I've ever seen in a fighting game. This may be blasphemy, but I think I had as much fun experimenting with the Kameo fighters to figure out the best ways to utilise their abilities in MK1 as I had with the support characters in Marvel vs. Capcom. The selection of Kameo fighters consists of a mix of characters from the main roster, like Sub-Zero and Scorpion, and characters who aren't playable in Mortal Kombat 1, like Sonya Blade and Jax. I understand why NetherRealm would want to include the fan favourites as Kameo fighters as well as playable characters, but I honestly wish they hadn't. I think it would have been far more interesting to have the lineup of Kameo fighters include none of the playable characters. At this point, Mortal Kombat has such an absurdly large stable of characters to pull from, and they could have used this opportunity to shine a light on some lesser known MK characters. Each Kameo fighter has their own distinct moveset, so you'll have to experiment to figure out which Kameo fighters best suit your playstyle. Scorpion can use his spear to pull your fighter out of the way of an incoming attack. Kung Lao can teleport you behind your opponent. Cyrax can send out a net to trap his target, and Sector's flame-based attacks are great for extending your combos. Kameo fighters even have their own fatalities that can be used at the end of a match, and having more fatalities in a Mortal Kombat game is never a bad thing. Speaking of fatalities, the lineup of fatalities in MK1 is sure to please any gorehound. Fatalities have been such a massive part of Mortal Kombat since its debut, and MK1 features some of the most grisly, memorable, and darkly comedic fatalities we've seen yet. With some of the highlights including Raiden's The Storm's Arrival fatality, which sees Raiden fling his opponent into the air, blast a hole through their midsection, fly into that hole to rip them in half, then grab the two halves and slam them together, leaving them as nothing but mush. Li Mei's Roman Candle fatality, where she pulls out her opponent's intestines, lights them like a fuse, then kicks their head off so that it explodes like a firework in mid-air. And Baraka's second fatality, in which he hangs his opponent from their entrails, roasts them over a fire, then calls in his fellow Tarkatan to eat them. And if this video wasn't already getting age restricted, it definitely is now for showing these. Mortal Kombat 1's roster of playable fighters is among the best in the franchise, with a healthy starting lineup of 22 characters. Well, 23 if you pre-ordered and got the pre-order bonus of Shang Tsung, which is a little gross. I always hate when companies tie something as significant as a character behind a pre-order, and it's something that NetherRealm has been doing for a while now. Nevertheless, this is a great roster, comprised of characters from various eras of Mortal Kombat, from the OGs like Liu Kang, Johnny Cage and Baraka, to characters introduced during the PS2 games like Li Mei, Havok and Tanya, to Geras from MK11. The only group not represented in MK1 are the kids of the classic characters, like Cassie Cage and Jackie Briggs, who were featured in the last couple of games. And while I did like these characters, I'm also fine with them being put on ice for a little while to give room for some of the more underappreciated characters of MK to make their return. However, this did leave me with a slight conundrum. In the last few Mortal Kombat games, my go-to characters have been Sonya and Cassie, and with neither of them being playable characters in MK1, I was in search of a new main. Fortunately for me, I was spoilt for choice, as there were several characters I liked playing as in MK1. I was especially fond of this game's versions of Li Mei and Sindel. Smoke is also absolutely nasty in Mortal Kombat 1. But I quickly found my new main in Raiden, which I was not expecting, as he's never been a go-to character for me. But with his slick combos that can quickly back an opponent into a corner, and a good variety of ranged and close-up special abilities, Raiden was the character who best suited my style of play. Mortal Kombat 1 has some of the best character designs in the entire series. Characters like Sub-Zero, Scorpion and Mileena look fantastic here, and by combining the classic ninja look of Reptile with the more monstrous lizard version from the PS2 era by having him transform into his reptilian form when he attacks, NetherRealm has created the best version of Reptile we've seen yet. The default costumes for most of the characters in Mortal Kombat 1 look fantastic, but there's also plenty of great skins for each of the characters. It's especially cool that they finally got a Jean-Claude Van Damme skin for Johnny Cage, complete with VO from JCVD, seeing as he's who Johnny was based on in the first place. There were only a couple of characters whose designs I didn't like as much in Mortal Kombat 1. This version of Kitana certainly isn't my favourite, which is a shame because she's traditionally been one of my most played characters. But the only character who I actively disliked in MK1 was Nitara. It's so jarring that it's literally just Megan Fox's face on this character, and the abysmal performance she gave certainly didn't help. Every one of her lines is so stilted and clumsy. I'm kinda shocked that NetherRealm wasn't scared off of this kind of stunt casting after the negative reception to Ronda Rousey's performance as Sonya in MK11. Of course, a great roster doesn't mean much if there aren't interesting things to do with them, but thankfully, Mortal Kombat 1 has an abundance of modes to dig into. MK1 has the full suite of online modes that you'd expect, complete with casual, ranked, and King of the Hill matches, and in my experience, the online experience has been very stable. And no fighting game is complete without an arcade mode. So of course MK's towers return here, allowing you to jump into ladders of various lengths and difficulties, and beating a tower with each character is how you get to see the various character endings if you're interested in getting that additional lore. Mortal Kombat 1 also has one extra mode for solo players, outside of story mode and towers, called Invasions. Invasions is a brand new mode where you move around an overworld map, battling in near endless fights with various modifiers, button mash your way through test your might challenges, and attempt to survive minigames where you have to jump over incoming projectiles. The maps in Invasions are themed around different locations from across Outer World and Earthrealm that are featured in the story, like the Tarkatan Colony, Shang Tsung's Laboratory, and the Fire Temple. Completing fights in Invasions rewards you with various items, like keys that open gear chests and new pathways on the map, and magical talismans that you can equip and then use to perform elemental spells with a flick of the right stick. Invasions also has some light RPG elements baked into it. When you jump into Invasions, you can choose any character in the roster to play as, and as you win fights and complete challenges with them, they'll level up and earn stat points that can be used to upgrade their various attributes. By the time I reached the end of Invasions, my Raiden was crazy overpowered. I put a ton of points into basic attacks, so I was taking down most grunts within 2 combos. Invasions also has an area filled with its own unique towers that refresh on an hourly, daily, and weekly basis, and these are the towers you'll want to take on if you're looking for a real challenge. Some of these towers stack several different modifiers, so they're often absolutely brutal. When you're fighting an enemy and there's a modifier that turns your opponent invisible, but there are also flaming skulls flying in from all directions, things get chaotic fast. The Invasions mode is incredibly repetitive. You're doing a lot of the same type of fights over and over again, but honestly, I still had fun with it. Probably more so than I did with World Tour in Street Fighter 6. I think a large part of the reason I had fun with Invasions is because I didn't try and marathon it, and I don't think you're meant to. Instead, I chipped away at it over a couple of weeks. I'd often start with a tower and then jump into story mode for an hour, then switch over to Invasions for a while, before jumping out and playing a handful of ranked matches. Constantly mixing it up is the best way to keep the game feeling fresh. There's also good reason to revisit Invasions, as it's a mode that evolves over time, with the maps and rewards changing with each new in-game season. By playing through each new iteration of Invasions, you'll earn a ton of seasonal outfits for various characters, as well as seasonal currency that can be used to buy pieces of gear themed around each specific season. The gear system has been a large part of NetherRealm's games since Injustice 2, and it once again makes a return in MK1, though the gear has certainly come a long way since Injustice 2. I'm a huge DC fan, and even I've got to say that game had some of the most hideous looking gear those characters have ever rocked. And while there are still some duds in MK1, the hit to miss ratio is much better here, and there are a ton of great looking costumes. Mortal Kombat 1's gear system keeps things nice and simple. It allows you to change your character's skins and swap out one additional piece of gear, always the most iconic piece of each character's outfit, like Johnny's sunglasses, Scorpion's mask, Melina's size, or Kung Lao's hat. Changing your gear is purely cosmetic, and doesn't affect a character's stats in any way. When you play with each fighter, both playable and Kameo fighters, they'll gain XP that increases their level, which unlocks new pieces of gear, and even new taunts, brutalities, and fatalities. So the more you play as a character, the more ways you're going to have to customize them. Basically everything you do in Mortal Kombat 1 will also earn you coins that can be traded for random pieces of gear, as well as bonus items like concept art. NetherRealm has been making the most impressive looking fighting games for an entire generation now, and that trend is continuing with Mortal Kombat 1. Mortal Kombat 1 is a beautiful game with great lighting and particle effects, absurdly detailed costume textures, and the gore is looking grosser than ever. One of the most impressive aspects of the visuals in NetherRealm's games is the facial animation. Since Injustice 2, NetherRealm's games have featured some of the game industry's most exceptional facial capture technology, and Mortal Kombat 1 has their best looking cutscenes yet. The production values are through the roof. You wouldn't expect a fighting game to be where you go for cinematic storytelling in a video game, but NetherRealm does this better than nearly any other developer. Every aspect of Mortal Kombat 1 oozes style. Even the character select screen is so slick, with you and your opponent's chosen characters clashing and trash talking each other, only for the background to transition into your chosen arena as the battle begins without any loading screens. Similarly, I was so impressed by how seamlessly MK1 transitions from cutscenes into fights in story mode. As always, Mortal Kombat 1 also sounds as magnificent as it looks. I'm sure the Foley team must have had a blast finding ways to make all the disgusting squelching and cracking sounds that are made as these characters pulverize each other. Mortal Kombat 1 is yet another outstanding effort from NetherRealm. MK1's visuals are first class, there's plenty of content to keep every type of player happy, and the new Kameo fighters add a new layer of depth to fights by allowing you to string together lengthier combos than ever before. I also cannot say enough good things about MK1's spectacular story mode, which serves as the ultimate celebration of the Mortal Kombat universe. Night after night, I feel compelled to come back to Mortal Kombat 1, which is rare for me. Once I finish a game, I'm usually ready to move on, but that's just not the case here. And with plenty more reasons to play on the horizon, with exciting DLC characters and new invasion seasons, I don't see myself putting MK1 down anytime soon. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe and leave a comment. You can find countless other reviews on my channel, including my recent review of Pikmin 4, and be sure to stay tuned for my upcoming reviews of Starfield and Assassin's Creed Mirage.